Hello and welcome to our special Africa Cup of Nations show on France 24. Over the next 17 minutes, we'll be bringing you all the results and reaction from another packed day of AFCON action as two teams' dreams of the ultimate prize lives on and two teams have to pack their bags. I'm delighted to say that I'm joined in studio by sports journalist Thando Sibiya and we'll be crossing live to our correspondent James Vasina in Ivory Coast. Well, let's start with the latest. And DRC Congo are through to the quarterfinals at the expense of Egypt. They won on penalties after a 1-1 draw. Meshak Elie gave Congo the lead, heading home from close range after 37 minutes. Egypt equalised through a Mustafa Mohamed penalty after a lengthy VAR decision. Neither side could find the net again in 90, so the tie went to extra time. The Pharaohs' Mohamed Hamdi received his marching orders for a second yellow card early in extra time. Neither side could find that decisive goal, so penalties it was. Mustafa Mohamed and Arthur Masuaku exchanged misses. The Egyptian keeper then missed. The Congolese one scored, and so Congo through to the quarter-finals. Thando, I'll bring you in. I mean, it's just finished. I've just about got my breath back. What a game. In the end, you could say Congo deserved it. They looked slightly the better side on the night. What did you think?
Definitely from the beginning till the end. I just feel like there was the in-between spaces when I think they lost creativity, they lost that firepower, the fearlessness that they had at the beginning of the game. But I'm very happy with the result. I think they performed really well throughout the tournament and they're quite deserving of this one.
Did it feel like Egypt were playing for penalties at one point, especially after they went down to 10 men? It looked like they kind of parked the bus and were really waiting for that penalty shootout, maybe.
Definitely. And then I think they would find a few opportunities here and there to then go into attack mode. But even then, it wasn't so great. So I do think that DRC really tried with the chances, but there was no way to be creative, especially in the middle in face of goal, because they just generally parked the bus. I think you had like 4 defenders blocking that middle point, and then you'd have like another 2 on the outside. And so they'd have to play it all the way to the middle of the park, and this is DRC, to then try and seek opportunities, taking it into the left and right flanks, but never really succeeding, because as soon as you cross it into the box, you just have like 4 or 5 defenders, and it was really tough for them to do that. They didn't have the height in the box, and so I think it was really tricky for them, but this is the result we have.
This is the result we have indeed. Yeah. Just a quick word on Egypt as a whole. Of course, they lost Mohamed Salah through injury, the talismanic Mohamed Salah, but they were runners-up last time out. Of course, they're 7 times champions. They're an AFCON heavyweight. It's been a really disappointing tournament. They've not won a single game. A real disappointment for the Pharaohs, wasn't it?
True, and I think they're definitely going to have to go to the drawing board. It's going to be a really tricky one for the coaching staff, for the entire federation, in terms of seeing what needs to be changed when going back to the drawing board. I do think that the Egyptians are still capable of doing well. We saw it in the depth that they carried through this team. I think even the DRC coach, Sébastien Desabre, he mentioned this in the press conference yesterday or the day before, considering that we've gone into the new day after this extended match. But he did mention that they have a lot of depth, that is the Egyptian side. So I do think that when they go back to the drawing board, they can then take a few things into consideration. I do think that the loss of El Shanawi and Mo Salah was definitely felt in this game in terms of creativity and also then in between the sticks. And I think those were the exact critical moments that they actually needed that extra depth, that extra experience. But also then again, they had those players in the earlier stages of the tournament and they still couldn't pull it through. So definitely when they go back to the drawing board, there's a lot to look into. Is it the coaching staff? Is it the players? Is it the whole thing where you just really have to deconstruct everything and start from scratch? Because that's what we're actually seeing with the other teams like the DRC, where Coach Desabre came in 2002, and he's done an incredible job with this side. So, à voir.
Well, joining Egypt in the quarterfinals will be Guinea. They beat Equatorial Guinea 1-0 with virtually the final kick of the game. There was certainly no lack of action throughout the 90 minutes. Federico Bicoro was shown a red card for Equatorial Guinea just after half-time for a high boot. Despite being down to 10, Thunder had the chance to win the game after they were awarded a penalty, but the tournament's top scorer, Emiliano Nsue, couldn't convert from the spot. He hit the post. Mohamed Bayo sent the Guinean fans delirious with a header 8 minutes into injury time, sending his team into the quarterfinals for the first time since 2015. Well, let's bring in James Vasina, who's live from Abidjan. James, pure joy for Guinea. Heartbreak, of course, for Equatorial Guinea. Is it too simplistic to say that the red card was the difference? What made the difference between the two Guineas today?
Well, it definitely did make a difference, and I actually spoke to Bikora after the game, and for him, definitely that was the turning point in it. You'll hear a little bit from him just in a minute's time, but I think just in general, if we look at how things went out, and it wasn't down to the last few minutes, it was down to the last seconds of the game. This is how tight it was in the end. Either side struggling many times to create things or even to retain the ball, really. It was very, very difficult. That red card that we mentioned there also seemed to perhaps they were able to catch up from that with that possible penalty, where then Su managed to fail to deliver on that one. Well, it really felt like that was it for them, because that's what they needed, no shots on target by then. So there was one opportunity to perhaps go ahead, but once they'd missed that, the top goal scorer bows out of the tournament and was unable to create anything else after that. Guinea then come and are able to go into that further territory. Before Equatorial Guinea, yes, it is that they were very, very sad after the game, after hearing all that, and the issues around that red card was, I've got to say, I've been able to watch the moment it was handed out again on VAR, and it does look, as you know, when it's slowed down, you see from different angles, it does look very, very different to what I saw on the pitch at that point. Was exactly what he had to say. Let's just take a little listen to either side, obviously from the winning side from today, but also some of the heartache from the losing team.
I feel good, man. I feel good because it's been a long time. We ain't got the chance to go through. So tonight we did it, so we are very happy.
You could see very clearly that my leg wasn't stretched out. If it was, I would understand. But the moment I got the red card, the referee ruined the match. We're the only African team that speaks Spanish, and every time these decisions go against us.
Well, that was, let's say, the clean version of the translation that we've provided there. If you understood anything of it there, it was much more figurative words that he had to say about the way that his team is treated. I'll let you do any investigation into that if you like. But nevertheless, in it, it is Equatorial Guinea who bow out, despite brilliant performances so far. Weren't definitely expecting this result today. But in the end, it was a matter of two sides going head-to-head, and Guinea coming out and going into further territory in the quarterfinals to set up what's going to be another nice clash to come after the rest of today's results, as you just mentioned just a bit earlier on in the studio.
Well, let's look ahead to tomorrow's fixtures now, and there's a massive clash between hosts Ivory Coast and defending champions Senegal. The Elephants will have a new coach in Emerse Faye, and despite their poor form in the tournament, they still seem to fancy their chances. James, I just want to ask you, what's the feeling like in the home country? Do they honestly believe that they can beat Senegal tomorrow?
They do. Look, put it this way. A couple of days ago, they wanted to see the end of the coach. They were talking about a national disgrace. Well, they've seen the back of the coach. He's left now. And they had no belief in... They just said that this was a disgrace, that they were organising the tournament, that Ivory Coast couldn't be able to create anything out of it. And actually look at the results in the group stages. They're absolutely terrible. Now, that has all disappeared. The moment Morocco managed to help them to qualify as one of the third best placed teams, well, Moroccan flags have appeared across the capital. There's I Love Morocco over Ivorian flags around here, and it's almost like they've forgiven also the team that they were criticising so heavily for saying that they weren't creating anything, they weren't representing the country and weren't fighting for the country as they should be on the pitch. Well, that's all forgotten, and now yes, they do believe that they can beat Senegal. Senegal, the team who's managed to win all three of their games so far, the defending champions, and who are looking extremely solid, not taking in goals just as the host team have been. So that is the mood. Whether that's going to happen tomorrow, it's going to be difficult. We're going to be at that game. We're going to follow it. And obviously, the whole of the country is. A lot of people are going to be expected to be at the game. But yes, the belief, to answer your question quite simply, Leo, is that yes, they can win against Senegal. And in their words, that this is the start of the tournament now.
Well, that's James Vasina live from Abidjan. Thanks very much, James. I want to bring you back in, Thando, on the same match. Senegal, Ivory Coast. It's an absolute mouth-watering clash. But look, their form couldn't be more different in the tournament. Senegal have been perfect so far, still very much one of the favourites. Of course, Ivory Coast lost 4-0 to Equatorial Guinea, that humiliating defeat which led to the coach being sacked. How do you see that one? Because on paper, Senegal win that 10 times out of 10. But of course, we know football isn't played on paper.
Exactly. We've seen it in the past few games. Yeah, we saw Equatorial Guinea being struck out by Guinea that we considered as mediocre coming into this game. And then we were also stunned by the Egypt and DRC game. And even yesterday, we saw a few shockers as well. So I think the teams that were stronger exiting the group stages do have the target on their back in terms of the range that they can create in terms of their game plan. And also looking at Ivory Coast, they really had to go back to the drawing board. They saw just how close they got to being knocked out of the tournament. And so I think from a federate level, from the level of the players themselves, they really got to see that this could be a very disappointing thing if they get struck out of the tournament at this stage. And so I think they will come back a lot hungrier. Looking at Senegal, they are a very strong team. I think they're one of the strongest in the whole tournament, apart from Morocco. They were considered as favourites, but I think even as the tournament unfolds, they are proving to us why they're considered as the favourites. They have attacking prowess. They have so much depth in the front and in the middle of the park, and defensively they're strong as well. And so I do think that for the Ivorians coming into this one, they're definitely going to have to do a whole lot of research, and they're going to have to manage the game very well. They're rivals culturally, they're rivals on the pitch, and I promise you tomorrow is just going to be something insane. Everything is going to factor into this game, from the ambience of the stadium to the temperature on the day of, down to the tiniest details. And so I do think it's going to be a scintillating match.
Well, I personally can't wait, and I know there's going to be millions who are joining me who'll be watching that tomorrow. And tomorrow's other match will see Cape Verde take on Mauritania. It's Mauritania's first ever knockout match at the Africa Cup of Nations, and they'll be hoping to make even more history. Cape Verde have been one of the surprise packages of the tournament so far, topping their group ahead of Egypt and Ghana. James Vasina was at the Blue Sharks training this week ahead of that mammoth clash.
They're one of the big surprises in the tournament, not just because they make it through once again to the round of 16, but because Cape Verde topped Group B, the only team, in fact, to have won not just one, but two matches in that group. They finished well ahead of Egypt. They managed to get a 2-2 draw against them, and now they've got another big fixture to come in the round of 16.
I had said same as for the previous matches, with a lot of commitment and determination. And we are excited to be there so we can fight for qualification.
We know
it was the group phase, that it was important that we had to start the competition somehow. And I think we had a good start, but the most difficult part is definitely ahead of us, so it's going to be a lot harder. So we're staying focused, staying grounded, and we'll just keep training.
Well, the team is training here behind me, and one of the big questions that we're asking ourselves, of course, is what are things going to look like on the tactical side of things? We could presume that not too much is going to change, considering that they did manage to hold up against the most titled team of this tournament. This time around, Cape Verde are coming up against Mauritania, another one of the massive surprises. One of the surprises because, of course, they managed to beat Algeria in their dramatic game in the group stages. This is two teams who are going head-to-head and have everything to play for. But so what's for sure is they're going to be fighting very hard to make it through into the next round, and they'll be preparing this with a lot of intention and very carefully ahead of this Monday night clash.
Well, Thando, I can't let you leave without talking about South Africa. Of course, they play Morocco on Tuesday, as you mentioned, one of the favourites for the tournament. Look, they're going to be underdogs. Bafana, can they pull off a shock against Morocco and try to leave any bias to one side? Can they pull off a shock on Tuesday?
I definitely think they can, but they're going to have to work very hard. Coach Walid for Morocco, he's very upset coming into this one. I think the suspension shock was quite scary for the team, and I think when they're going into this game against Bafana, they're going to be quite well prepared. He's a tactician. They made it to the semi-finals of the World Cup, and so they do have that gravitas in this game. But also Bafana, Coach Hugo Bruce, they do their research as well, and I do think that seeing how they performed against Namibia was quite a good one. Are they the same in terms of their capabilities, Namibia and Morocco? Not at all, not by a long shot. But I do think that if they keep the attacking plan that they do have. In the past 2 games, they've built the game around Evidence Makgopa up front, and then having Tembazwane, Percy Tau building into that. And I think if they can keep that up, but then just find some ways to be a little bit more creative around that, using more of the midfield, a little bit more of the defense, even here and again. And then also defensively, they're really going to have to be very strong. I think the Moroccans are very strong up front, and I've watched a few of their games. They have a very challenging, quick pass movement in the box that can be very difficult for the defenders if you're ever caught napping. And I think the game management, especially in defense, is going to be very integral in that game. So it's any man's game for now, but I'm definitely going with Bafana Bafana pulling a shocker like they did against Egypt a few years ago.
Well, Thando Sibiya, thank you very much. That's all we have time for this evening. Thank you, of course, again to Thando in the studio and James Vasina from Ivory Coast. And thank you for watching. Tune in at the same time tomorrow, 11:10 Paris time, for all the latest from the Africa Cup of Nations as the round of 16 continues. Goodbye for now.
France 24, every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.